April 1945, a small German village, caught between surrender and silence. Smoke still hangs over the rooftops like ghosts refusing to leave. In the distance, truck engines idle, drowning out the sound of chickens and whispered prayers. An old woman clutches her shawl tighter as American boots thud down the cobblestone. The war is over, they said, but now something else begins. Doors creak open under rifle butts. Women are pulled from basements, squinting into daylight, faces streaked with soot and disbelief. Screening? The soldiers call it, the word bouncing coldly through translators. Nobody knows what that means. One mother reaches for her son. He's shoved aside. Another tries to speak English. Please, we are civilians. But her voice cracks as a hand grips her arm. Locals whisper from the corners of broken houses. They took our mothers into their barracks. No one dares follow. The air smells of damp stone, diesel, and fear. Inside the barracks, cots are lined like metal ribs. A typewriter clacks somewhere, recording names that will vanish into paperwork. The women are told to sit. A young GI lights a cigarette, watching them through the haze. His expression is unreadable, not cruel, not kind. Just numb, war fatigue painted across his face. By dusk, the village square is empty. The men are gone, either dead or marched away weeks ago. The only sounds now, the generators hum, the occasional sob carried by the wind. Over 11 million Germans have been captured by Allied forces. Soldiers, civilians, and those who fell somewhere in between. Most believe the nightmare ended with surrender, but for these women, captivity has only changed uniforms. Through a slit in the barrack window, one girl stares at the sky turning dark violet. The night presses close. Someone murmurs a prayer, then a scream, brief, muffled. It doesn't echo, it dies in the wood and fabric. The others stare straight ahead, not daring to move. The generator drones louder, almost drowning the sound. Almost tomorrow, the intake will begin, and the silence will settle in for good. The next morning breaks cold and metallic. Fog hangs over the camp like a held breath. Floodlights cut through it in sharp cones, illuminating rows of women standing barefoot in the mud. A soldier yells, "Line up," his voice flat, practiced. Boots splash through puddles. Dogs bark somewhere near the wire fence, their chains rattling like punctuation marks in the silence. The screening begins. One by one, the women hand over their identification papers, birth certificates, ration cards, the last proof of their names. The documents vanish into a wooden desk stacked high with files. An officer stamps a form without looking up. Temporary civilian internment U.S. sector. It sounds administrative, harmless almost, until the doors lock behind them. Inside the barracks, the air is thick with disinfectant and diesel. Canvas walls sweat from the inside. The stench of unwashed bodies clings to everything. They're ordered to strip, deloused, issued grey blankets marked U.S. Army. One woman hesitates, a guard slams his baton on the table. Move, she does. Her cheeks burn. For the first time it hits them. They are not civilians anymore. They are POW, prisoners of war. A young woman whispers, "But we never fought." Another answers, "Now it doesn't matter." In Washington, the paperwork calls these facilities temporary containment centers. Reports indicate the Red Cross wasn't allowed entry for weeks. Bureaucracy called it security necessity. The women called it something else, erasure. Outside, trucks roll by loaded with rations and fuel drums. Inside, the women eat watery soup, one tin bowl passed between two. A soldier tosses bread through the door like feeding livestock. Some catch it midair, others just watch. One of them murmurs, "We weren't soldiers, but they treated us like we had guns." The nights stretch longer. The floodlights never switch off artificial daylight that refuses to let the darkness feel natural. Sleep becomes a rumor. When someone coughs too loud, the guards bang on the walls with rifle butts. By midnight, the fog outside has lifted, but inside the air feels heavier than ever. Among the rows of shivering women, a pair of trembling hands clutch a blanket to her chest. She's young, scarred, eyes hollowed by smoke. Tomorrow, She'll have a name, Hilda, the girl from Dresden. She doesn't speak when they ask her name. The clerk writes Hilda because it's easier than waiting for an answer. Her papers were lost months ago, burned like her city, Dresden. The name alone still feels like ash in her mouth. Hilda is 22, though her face has learned more winters than that. Her hands are wrapped in thin rags, hiding the burned scars that spider up her wrists. When she moves, her skin tightens painfully, a souvenir from February's inferno. She remembers the sky that night, blood, orange and falling. Over 25,000 dead, the city flattened. She'd survived by crawling into a half-collapsed cellar. Now, weeks later, she's back underground, only this time, the prison has walls that don't move. The barracks smell like old metal and disinfectant. Soldiers bark orders through translators. You clean, you scrub floor. The women obey, anything to avoid attention. Hilda kneels, water sloshing, brushes scraping wood. Every motion drags at her burned skin, reopening the memory. A soldier walks past, his boots splattering dirty water across her arm. She doesn't flinch. When she steals a glance upward, she sees his face boyish, maybe 20. He looks tired, not cruel. Their eyes meet for half a second before he looks away, muttering something she doesn't catch. That flicker of humanity confuses her more than the shouting ever could. At night, Hilda wraps herself in the army blanket, trying to breathe through the stench of sweat and fear. She listens to the wind against the tin roof, to the quiet sobbing from the corner bunk. The sound repeats, slow and rhythmic, like someone gasping through their palms. She realizes it's not crying, it's muffled screaming. The first time it happens, she freezes. The second time, she learns not to move. The guards patrol outside, their flashlights slicing through the cracks in the boards. No one speaks. The rule is simple, silence is survival. Hilda closes her eyes and imagines Dresden's Elbe River instead, the smell of bread, her mother's voice, the ringing church bells before the bombs. The memory is too clean for this place, too kind, but when the next scream dies into quiet, the barracks holds its breath. Every woman listens, every heartbeat sinks in fear, and by dawn, silence becomes the only sound left alive. Night falls like a curtain no one dares lift. Inside the barracks, breath is shallow, measured. Every creak of wood sounds too loud, every footstep outside too close. The generator hums, a dull, endless sound that eats into their nerves. Somewhere a door slams, then silence again. It begins quietly. A shuffle, a muffled protest, a sound too human to be mistaken. The women tense, their eyes locked on the darkness between bunks. Someone whispers, "Don't move." Another covers her face with the grey army blanket. The sounds continue, short, sharp, smothered halfway through. Then nothing. By morning, nobody speaks. They just stare at the floor, pretending not to notice the red marks on one woman's wrists. Fear doesn't travel by words anymore, it moves by glances. By afternoon, the whispers start about what happens at night, about which guard smells of whiskey, about the ones who come back unable to cry. Somewhere in another zone, military police file a report, incident under investigation. In practice, nothing happens. Post-war documents later note over 860 recorded assaults in U.S. controlled areas. Historians say the real number is likely much higher. Back then, there were no headlines, no trials. Just rumors that carried like smoke across the ruins of Germany. A diary found years later contained one line written in pencil. We learned to scream into our hands. That became survival, pressing palms against mouths, choking the noise, so the others wouldn't have to hear. Hilda sits awake one night, her arms wrapped around her knees, nails digging into her skin. The air is heavy with fear and the faint stink of oil. A guard's flashlight beam slices across the floorboards, glinting off a metal pail. She doesn't move. Behind her, a quiet sob starts, the kind that has no tears left. She reaches out, just enough for her fingertips to brush another's shoulder. No words, just contact, a reminder that they're still here. In the morning, an officer walks through the door, clipboard in hand. His face is blank, jaw tight, uniform spotless. He looks around the room, says flatly, "Orders are orders." Then he leaves, and the sound of his boots fades. Outside, the sun finally rises, cold and indifferent. But one man doesn't look away from the women as he passes. A U.S. sergeant, his expression unreadable, and by tomorrow he'll break one rule too many, morning again. The same whistle, the same barked orders, the same metallic clang of tin cups hitting tables. Routine has become its own kind of weapon, mechanical, impersonal, endless. The women stand in lines, waiting for inspection. A clipboard officer moves down the row, eyes flicking from face to face. No empathy, no anger, just procedure. Name, Hilda. He checks a box. Status, civil internee. The pen squeaks, and that's her existence reduced to ink. Behind him, a younger American sergeant, sleeves rolled up. Sunburned, watches quietly. He's seen worse during the war, or so he tells himself. But the sight of women standing barefoot on cold mud stirs something uneasy in his chest. The camp is run by regulations. Food rations are measured by calorie tables. Hygiene hours are scheduled. Complaints are dismissed as non-priority. Everything has a rule. And every rule hides the same truth: no one wants responsibility. In one corner, a soldier laughs while tossing bread at a group of women like feeding pigeons. Another says they were part of Hitler's machine, right? The officer doesn't answer. He just notes disciplinary check complete and walks off. That phrase, "rules are rules," becomes gospel. It justifies the coldness, the silence, even the screams that echo through thin walls at night. Bureaucracy builds a fortress thicker than any wall. By mid-afternoon, Hilda's hands ache from scrubbing again. A guard approaches, demanding she clean the officer's quarters next. She nods without looking up. The man smirks. "You're lucky. Could be worse." His tone isn't cruel, just casual, as if misery is normal. Outside, a jeep pulls up. Two new officers step out, reading from papers stamped with U.S. Army SEALs. They discuss classification procedures, psychological impact, and compliance levels. None of those words mean mercy. When night falls, a patrol checks the barracks again. One guard mutters to another, "Orders came down, Red Cross still not allowed." The other replies, "Good, less paperwork." And yet, somewhere inside this machinery, one man hesitates. A medic, usually silent, watches as a woman faints during roll call. He steps forward, but the officer glares, "Not your job, soldier." He steps back, jaw tight, fists clenched. That night he won't sleep. Tomorrow he'll decide that rules aren't enough anymore. The medic's name is Corporal James Riley, 24, from Ohio. He's patched up bodies from Normandy to the Ardennes, but nothing prepared him for this camp. He was told it's just post or processing. But when he sees the women, hollow-eyed, shivering, their skin stretched tight over bones, that phrase starts to rot in his head. At dawn, Riley walks through the barracks with a first aid kit swinging from his shoulder. The women look away. They've learned that eye contact can invite punishment. One coughs so hard she doubles over. He kneels beside her, presses a hand to her forehead. Fever. He opens his kit. There's barely anything inside: a few bandages, alcohol, 2 tins of sulfur powder. He gives her a sip from his canteen. A guard clears his throat. "You done, that's not your assignment." Riley stands, voice low. "If I don't help, she dies." The guard shrugs. Then she dies. Orders are orders. That phrase again, cold, circular, safe. Riley walks out without another word, the sound of boots crunching on gravel echoing behind him. Later, when the lights dim and the watch changes, he returns, quiet steps, no flashlight. He slips through the side door of the infirmary tent, pulls open a crate marked U.S. medical supplies. Inside, quinine, dressings, hardtack rations, enough to matter, enough to break a rule. He hides some under his coat, heart pounding, and walks the narrow path back to the women's barracks. The guards are half asleep, smoking near the gate. He passes with a nod. Inside, the air is thick with the stench of sweat and fear. Hilda wakes as the door creaks open. Riley crouches, hands her a small bundle. 2 pieces of bread, a strip of cloth, a tablet of quinine. She stares at it like it's gold. For a moment, their eyes meet, enemy and enemy, both too tired to believe in that word anymore. He whispers, "Don't tell anyone." She nods. He leaves as quietly as he came, boots vanishing into the mud. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of something fragile moves through the barracks, not hope exactly, but recognition. That humanity hasn't drowned completely in orders and paperwork. Tomorrow, that bread will be shared. And with it, a rumor that one of them remembers kindness. The bread passes hand to hand like contraband hope. It's small, stale, but sacred, a quiet rebellion against starvation. Hilda breaks her piece in half before taking a bite, sharing the rest with the girl beside her. The crust scrapes her gums, the taste more salt than flour. Yet for a moment the barracks feels human again. Outside, the camp generator growls on, feeding light to the watchtowers. Inside, women chew in silence, each bite too loud. Each swallow a reminder that someone risked everything for them. In 1945 Germany, the average civilian survived on under 1,0 calories a day. Here, it's less. The soup is thin as rainwater, the bread ration barely 2 ounces per person. Hunger has become another form of command. Hilda looks at the bread and thinks of Dresden's bakeries gone now, ovens twisted, roofs caved in. She remembers her mother's hands dusted with flour, soft laughter over dough. That memory burns almost worse than hunger itself. She closes her eyes and eats anyway. When the guards find crumbs near a cot the next morning, they bark questions no one answers. Where did it come from? Who's stealing rations? The silence infuriates them. One guard kicks over a bucket, the water splashing across the floor. Another mutters, "Let them starve," teaches discipline. That afternoon, Hilda's stomach knots. Guilt mixes with the weak warmth from the bread. It's not just food, it's evidence of kindness, and kindness is dangerous here. She hides what's left beneath a plank, praying the patrol doesn't check. At dusk, the same medic walks by, his expression tight. He doesn't look toward the barracks, but she knows he hears the faint rustle behind the walls, the sound of women eating in secret, alive because he disobeyed. Later, when lights go out, the women whisper blessings in their own tongues, short, broken, but real. The taste of bread lingers on their tongues like memory refusing to die. One of them says softly, "It tasted like guilt." Hilda nods. She understands, survival here is never clean. Then, the distant growl of engines cuts through the quiet, heavier this time, deeper. The ground trembles under the barracks floorboards. Someone whispers, "Trucks. More are coming. By dawn, the horizon will move again, and with it the camp itself." The sound comes first, diesel engines growling low, gears grinding over gravel. The women rise from their bunks, instinctively clutching their blankets. Outside, headlights slice through the fog like bayonets. Trucks, 6 of them, rumble into the yard, canvas flaps tied down tight. The guards shout orders in English. Translators echo in broken German. Everyone stay inside. New arrivals. The gates creak open. Exhaust fumes roll in thick as smoke. From the back of the first truck, women climb down slowly, dirt, caked, dazed, clutching whatever rags they still own. The guards herd them toward the barracks, counting out loud. 20, 40, 60, until even the officers lose track. The camp was built for 200. By nightfall, it holds twice that. Inside, bodies press shoulder to shoulder, air thick with sweat and diesel. Hilda steps aside as another woman stumbles past her bunk. Older, eyes glazed, whispering names like prayers. Outside, the trucks keep coming, in post. War Germany, the Allied occupation zones processed over 3 million civilians under temporary internment. Paperwork called it containment. In practice, it was overflow, an industrial rhythm of misery. Intake, register, confine. A U.S. captain lights a cigarette near the gate, exhaling smoke as he watches the line shuffle forward. He doesn't look cruel, just detached, like a man managing inventory. "Move them faster," he mutters. The women whisper among themselves. Where are they taking us? No one knows. The word relocation. floats around, but the barracks behind them tell a simpler truth. Once you go in, you don't come out soon. In one of the trucks sits a woman in a nurse's uniform, sleeve torn, red cross faded with dirt. She keeps her chin high despite the guards shouting. When she steps down, she scans the camp with cold defiance, a survivor's stare. Someone beside Hilda murmurs, she was Luftwaffe medical. The nurse glances toward Hilda, eyes sharp but not unkind. Their gazes meet just for a heartbeat, an unspoken recognition of shared endurance. Then the horn blares again, the trucks reversing back through the gates, engines roaring louder than the voices of those left behind. Dust settles over the camp like fog made of ash. By the time the sun sets, every cot is filled, and the nurse from the truck will not stay quiet for long. Her name is Elsa Weber, 30, once a Luftwaffe nurse, now prisoner number 271B. She walks with a limp, her boot soles worn thin from weeks on the road. The first night she arrives, she takes in everything: the guards' rotations, the sound of the generator cutting out at midnight, the moment silence falls like a curfew bell. She doesn't break, she observes. On the second morning, she spots a child among the prisoners, barely 12, coughing hard, ribs visible through her shirt. No one claims her. The officers listed her as civilian dependent. Elsa kneels, feeling the girl's forehead. Fever, weak pulse, dehydration. She needs water. Elsa says to the nearest guard. He shrugs. Rations are for listed personnel. She'll die by morning. Not my problem. Elsa straightens, jaw tightening. She's been trained to obey command structures, to follow rules, but these rules belong to a different war. She stands taller than the guard, her voice steady. If you won't help her, I will. The camp freezes. The guard's smirk fades. A few women gasp quietly. Confrontation is suicide here, but Elsa doesn't care anymore. He grabs her arm. Get back inside. She yanks free. Then you'll have to shoot me. For a moment, it's silent except for the hiss of the generator. Finally, the guard curses and storms off, muttering something about crazy kraut women. The others stare at her like she's lit a match in a powder room. Later that day, Elsa sneaks into the infirmary tent, finds the medic Riley. She doesn't beg, she demands. You have medicine, use it. He hesitates, torn between protocol and conscience. Finally, he hands her a small bottle of iodine. If they find out, they won't, she says, already walking away. By nightfall, the child's fever breaks. Word spreads quietly through the barracks. The nurse fought back. For the first time, the guards avoid her gaze. Power shifts slightly, invisibly, like a crack forming in stone, but defiance has a price. The next morning, Elsa's name is called over the loudspeaker. Report to the command tent. No one says goodbye. They just watch her walk into the sun, her back straight, her hands trembling only when she thinks no one sees. By evening she won't return except on a stretcher. The infirmary smells like rust and sickness. Flies cling to every surface, the bandages, the empty soup bowls, the damp corners of the canvas tent. Elsa lies on a stretcher, face pale, breath shallow. No one says what happened in the command tent, but everyone sees the bruises under her collar. Riley checks her pulse and swallows hard. You'll be all right. He lies softly. She doesn't answer. Outside, the camp is breaking down under its own weight. Too many prisoners, not enough medicine, no space left for the living. The latrines overflow. Water rations are cut. Coughing becomes constant, a rhythm that doesn't stop, day or night. Hilda wakes to the sound of retching. 2 bunks away, a woman collapses, her skin slick with sweat. The smell hits next. Sour, chemical, final, dysentery. Within hours, more are down. The guards panic, ordering the barracks to stay inside. Containment, they shout, but the disease moves faster than orders. Reports later estimate that up to 20% of Allied POW camps faced dysentery outbreaks in 1945. The numbers don't capture the smell, the heat, the buzzing of flies over fevered skin. Riley works non-stop, his uniform stained with iodine and dirt. He steals what supplies he can: quinine, sulfur, aspirin, but it's never enough. The officers write camp fever in the logs, a bureaucratic phrase that hides the truth. Inside the tents, people are dying quietly, one cough at a time. Hilda helps where she can, holding hands, cleaning wounds, ignoring the guards' warnings. She finds strength in motion. If she stops, the fear will crush her. When she wipes Elsa's forehead, the nurse opens her eyes and whispers, "Don't let them forget us." Then she drifts into unconsciousness again. At night, the sky flickers with distant lightning. The storm that follows drives rain through every crack in the barracks. The mud turns black and thick underfoot. Some women lift their faces to the rain, mouths open, drinking whatever water they can catch. It tastes like ash and iron, but it's life. Riley moves through the storm, his lantern flickering, carrying stolen medicine hidden in his coat. Hilda sees him through the doorway, drenched, exhausted, but still walking. By dawn, a faint hope stirs again. One stolen bottle of quinine, one act of mercy against a flood of death. When the fever finally ebbs, silence replaces the coughing, a silence that feels heavier than noise. The women begin to write, anything to remind themselves they still exist. Torn scraps of ration forms, the back of a Red Cross leaflet. Even the thin brown paper from medicine boxes, anything that can hold words becomes a lifeline. Hilda borrows a dull pencil from a guard too tired to care. She crouches on her bunk, writing in tiny letters to her mother, though she knows her mother is probably gone. "I am alive," she begins, then she stops, staring at the words until they blur. She doesn't write safe. It would be a lie. In another corner, Elsa, weak but conscious again, writes to no one. Her note is short, precise, like a medical report. The body can survive hunger longer than silence. She folds it carefully, presses it flat with her palm, and tucks it beneath her pillow. A week later, an officer collects all letters for processing. He stacks them neatly in a canvas bag. "Mail inspection," he says, though everyone knows what that means. They never see those letters again. Red Cross records from 1946 mention over 6 million unsent letters clogging Allied censorship channels, correspondence that never left Europe, words trapped between rules and guilt. Every night, more women write anyway. Words are their rebellion. They write in pencil, sometimes with ash mixed in water when ink runs out. They hide the letters under floorboards, behind loose planks, even sewn into the hems of their clothes. Hope stored like contraband. Riley finds one while cleaning the infirmary, a small folded square wedged behind a cot. He reads only the first line, "If anyone ever finds this, please tell them we were here." He puts it back exactly where it was, his hands shaking. Some truths are too heavy to deliver. Outside, autumn creeps closer. The leaves around the camp turn brittle and brown, scattering like paper in the wind. Hilda hides her own letter inside her mattress, pressing it flat so it won't crinkle when she lies down. She whispers the words to herself every night, like a prayer that refuses to die in her throat. Then one morning a rumor passes through the camp like a spark. Release orders are coming. Some will go free. Most don't believe it, not yet. The rumor becomes an echo, then a headline on the camp notice board. Certain civilian internees to be released per Allied command directive. It's typed in English and German, stamped in red ink that's already smudged by rain. For a moment, no one moves. Then whispers ripple through the barracks like wind through dry grass. Freedom, the word feels foreign in their mouths. After so long, it doesn't sound like salvation. It sounds like another command. At roll call, names are read aloud. Each syllable drags through the morning fog. Weber, Elsa, her head lifts weakly. Hilda, she freezes, unsure she heard right. The guard waves a clipboard impatiently. "Pack what you have." There isn't much to pack, a blanket. A pair of shoes held together by wire, the pencil she used to write her letter. Hilda folds her note carefully into her sleeve. The other women watch silently, some whispering blessings, others too hollow to speak. Outside, a line forms. Women shuffle toward the gate, their eyes darting between soldiers and sky. The war's been over for months, yet the air still carries tension, as if the guns could start again any second. One guard mutters, "Guess the paperwork's finally caught up." Another replies, "Good, fewer mouths to feed." Reports later show that mass civilian and POW releases began in late 1946, though many had been detained for more than 18 months. Bureaucracy lagged behind humanity, as always. Riley watches from a distance, hands in his pockets. He doesn't wave, he knows he shouldn't, but when Hilda passes by, her eyes catch his just once, and that silent exchange says everything words couldn't. Gratitude, grief, understanding, behind them, others press against the fence, watching the line move. Not everyone's name was called. Some realize they'll stay another winter here. Their faces blur into the fog, eyes following those who leave until the gates close again with a sound that feels final. Hilda doesn't look back, she can't. The gravel crunches under her feet as the gates creak open, revealing the broken landscape beyond, fields cratered by bombs, houses without roofs, a horizon that looks nothing like home. But for the first time, the air doesn't smell of diesel or disinfectant. Just cold wind, freedom, thin as paper. At dawn, the convoy moves out. The gates swing shut behind them with a clang that still rings hours later. The gates shut behind them with a hollow clang that echoes across the empty road. No one speaks for a long time. The women just walk, slow, uneven, dazed, their shapes dissolving into the fog. The war is over, the guards are behind them, but the silence still feels like command. Every step away from the camp feels both lighter and heavier. Hilda walks barefoot. Her shoes gave up miles ago. The gravel cuts her feet, but she doesn't stop. Beside her limps Elsa, the nurse, wrapped in a threadbare coat Riley slipped her before they left. The air smells of wet soil and distant smoke. The world is grey, flattened, bridges broken, fields gutted, roofs like skeletons against the sky. They pass villages that no longer have names, windows shattered, chimneys leaning, roads lined with craters. A sign half, buried in mud reads Dresden, 12 km. Hilda stares at it until her throat tightens. She whispers home, though she's not sure what that means anymore. Along the roadside, they see other freed civilians, men in ragged uniforms, children carrying pots, old women pushing carts filled with debris. Everyone walking in different directions, yet somehow all lost the same way. Reports from the time estimated that nearly 20% of returning civilians found their homes destroyed or occupied by others. Homecoming had become another kind of exile. When they finally reach the outskirts of Dresden, the silence deepens. The city isn't a city anymore, it's a graveyard of bricks. Streets vanish under rubble. The air carries the faint metallic tang of ash that never really went away. Hilda stops at what used to be her street. There's nothing left but the corner of a wall and the bent frame of a doorway. She walks through it anyway, stepping into the ghost of her old apartment. The floor creaks under her weight, dust rising in thin clouds. Elsa stands behind her, whispering, "You made it back." Hilda doesn't answer. Her eyes move across the emptiness, the absence of her mother's voice, the missing warmth of light through curtains. Everything familiar has been burned, buried, or borrowed by strangers. She kneels, presses her palm against the cold stone, and for the first time since the barracks, she lets herself cry. No screams, no hiding, just tears. Somewhere in the distance a church bell rings, faint, cracked, but real. And that sound will lead her into memory one last time. Years pass, but the sound never leaves her. Hilda sits by a window in a rebuilt Dresden apartment, 1952 now. The city alive again with trams, laughter, and radio music. Outside, children play on cobblestones laid over what used to be craters. The world insists on moving forward. But some nights, when the wind hits the glass just right, it still carries an echo, faint, muffled, human. She closes her eyes and she's back there. The barracks, the floodlights, the generator hum. the women sitting still, afraid to breathe too loud. The sound of boots outside, the way they screamed, not out loud, never out loud, but into their hands. That sound, strangled and swallowed, is what stayed. Hilda keeps her letter in a drawer, the one she never sent. The paper is brittle now, folded and refolded until the edges tore. She reads it sometimes in silence. I am alive, it says, nothing more. She never added another line. There was never a word for what came after. In the post-war years, reports begin to surface: Red Cross archives, West German testimonies, small articles buried on back pages. Between 1945 and the early 1950s, official records quietly acknowledged over 1,900 sexual assault claims linked to Allied occupation forces. The numbers are contested, the voices fragmented. Most cases never reach trial. History, as written, preferred cleaner heroes. But the silence of the victims was not consent, it was survival, and for Hilda, survival became memory. She visits the Elbe River sometimes, where the city's reflection trembles on the surface. The bridges are rebuilt, but the water still smells faintly of smoke on humid days. She sits on the stone edge, folding her hands the same way she did in the barracks. Back then, it was to hide a scream. Now it's to hold it. A child runs past her, laughing. The sound pulls her back to the present. She smiles faintly, though her eyes stay fixed on the horizon where dusk meets the river. Some ghosts don't ask for peace, they just want to be remembered. As the light fades, Hilda whispers to herself, not a prayer, not regret, just truth. They erase the sound, but it still lives in our hands. The wind carries the whisper away, soft, almost kind.